in the last few minutes that the professional wrestling and entertainment star Hulk Hogan has died in the US. Just information coming from WWE.
The official story came quickly and neatly. Heart attack, natural causes. A body that had taken decades of punishment was finally giving out. Hulk Hogan was 71, multiple surgeries, years of wear and tear. On paper, it all made sense. The headline practically wrote itself. But the investigators who walked into that mansion, they didn't see something that added up. It was the FBI, and they were bent on digging up the truth. Join us in this video as we reveal the terrific details of what the FBI exposed about Hulk Hogan's demise and the hidden room. The death of Hulk Hogan. On the morning of July 24th, 2025, the world lost one of the most recognizable figures to ever step into a wrestling ring. Hulk Hogan, the Immortal, the man who body-slammed Andre the Giant in front of 93,000 screaming fans. The man who made an entire country believe one person could be larger than life. Cardiac arrest. Clearwater, Florida. A private home belonging to Terry Jean Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan. The call came in, and emergency responders arrived fast. Paramedics rushed in and got to work immediately, doing everything they could to restart a heart that had carried him through decades of punishment, chaos, and comebacks. They tried everything. Nothing worked. At exactly 11:17 that morning, doctors at Morton Plant Hospital pronounced him dead. The medical report followed quickly. Acute myocardial infarction, a heart attack. The ruling, natural causes. For most people, that was enough. It was sad, sure, but not surprising. In a way, it felt inevitable. This was a man who had pushed his body to the limit for decades, years in the wrestling ring, more than 24 surgeries, a body held together by scar tissue, metal, and pure willpower. So the tributes came pouring in. Former opponents called him the man who built the stage they stood on. Wrestlers who came after, Dwayne Johnson, John Cena, and an entire generation made it clear, without Hogan, their world wouldn't exist. He didn't just perform in wrestling, he transformed it, took it from small arenas to a global phenomenon. And he did it with nothing but presence, pure, undeniable presence. For most people watching from the outside, that's where the story ended. But for the officers who stepped into that Clearwater mansion, that was just the beginning. Here's the part that often gets lost beneath all the headlines about Hogan's health. Yes, he had leukemia. Yes, he dealt with atrial fibrillation. Yes, his spine had been operated on so many times that it barely resembled its original structure. All of that is true, and all of it matters. But this matters too. In the weeks leading up to his death, Hulk Hogan was still training. People close to him described someone who actually looked better than he had in years. Not fading, not slowing down. His wife, Sky Daly, talked openly about his routine, clean eating, daily workouts, and meditation. She didn't describe a man barely holding on. She described someone at peace. Not the kind of forced positivity people put on for the public, but something quieter, more real. Like he had finally found solid ground. His son, Nick, said the same thing. He'd never seen his father this focused on his health. Photos from that time back it up. Hogan looked present, engaged, smiling. Not like a man winding down, more like someone settling into a new chapter. And then there's the surgery. On May 14th, 2025, just 10 weeks before his death, Hogan underwent a major spinal procedure. A 4-level anterior cervical discectomy and fusion. Surgeons went into his neck, removed damaged discs across 4 levels, and fused the vertebrae to relieve pressure on his nerves. It's not a small operation. It's one of the most complex spinal surgeries you can have. And at 71, with his medical history, the risks were serious. After his death, medical experts who reviewed the case pointed out something important. There's a nerve called the phrenic nerve. It controls the diaphragm. Basically, it's what allows you to breathe. And during a multi-level anterior cervical discectomy and fusion, that nerve sits very close to where surgeons operate. If it gets damaged, the the consequences aren't always immediate. Was it the case for Hulk Hogan? Was something quietly damaged inside his body without anyone's knowledge and that later took his life? Keep watching to find out. What the FBI found inside Hulk Hogan's house. Hogan's wife, Sky Daly, has said she plans to file a medical malpractice lawsuit. Her claim is direct, that the surgery damaged his phrenic nerve and that this damage ultimately contributed to the cardiac arrest that killed him.
WWE's legends regarding, quote, a cardiac arrest. Now,
no court has ruled on this yet, but medically, the theory holds weight, and it raises a question the official headline doesn't answer. Was this simply the end of a long physical decline? Or did something go wrong during that surgery 10 weeks earlier? Something no one caught in time. Officially, the cause of death is still listed as cardiac arrest. But hold on to that question, because what investigators found inside his mansion raised even more questions that no one was asking yet. When they first walked in, they expected the usual signs of a household in crisis: grief, disarray, medication bottles, medical equipment, the quiet evidence of a man in his final days. That's not what they found. What they found was different. The first thing that stopped them was the gym. Hulk Hogan's gym wasn't just another room in the house. It was his sanctuary, the place where he was most himself. People who knew him talked about it all the time. The same weights he'd used for decades, machines adjusted perfectly to his body. It wasn't just a workout space. It was a reflection of who he was, both the legend and the man behind it. Even in his later years, through surgeries, through recovery, he kept coming back to that room. That's why what they saw didn't make sense. On the morning of July 24th, the gym looked untouched. Not just clean, perfect, surfaces polished, weights lined up with almost unnatural precision, floor mats without a single mark, no water bottles, no towels, no sign that anyone had been there recently. For a man who was reportedly training right up until his final weeks, a spotless gym doesn't just happen. It looked staged. Investigators picked up on it immediately. Either Hogan hadn't used that room in much longer than anyone realized, or someone had gone through it carefully before the 911 call was made. Neither option sat well. And the gym, that was only the beginning. Hogan took his security seriously. His Clearwater mansion wasn't just protected, it was locked down with one of the most advanced private security systems you could have. Multiple camera systems, motion sensors covering the entire property, backup systems designed to keep everything running even if the power goes out. Hogan was extremely careful about who came into his home and when. He controlled access tightly, and he rarely made exceptions. Which is why what they found that morning raised eyebrows. The entire security system had been turned off. Not because of a power outage, not because of a glitch. It had been manually disabled. Someone had gone to the control panel inside the house and shut it down, deliberately. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. They had the codes, they understood the system, and they managed to turn it off without triggering any alerts. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere, no broken locks, no tampered windows, nothing to suggest anyone forced their way in, which leaves only two possibilities. Either Hogan turned off his own security system before his death, for reasons no one has been able to explain, or someone with trusted, authorized access made sure that whatever happened inside that house would never be recorded. Federal teams showed up with tools and expertise far beyond what local investigators typically have. Cybercrime specialists, digital forensics experts, people who understand smart homes and complex surveillance systems inside out. They had a clear objective: rebuild the timeline. Figure out who had control of the house in the hours before the 911 call, and whether the official story really told the whole truth. Because homes like Hogan's don't just exist, they record. What did they find? Was Hogan's passing really from a natural cause? Or was there something really fishy going on? Let's see. What really happened to Hulk Hogan? Investigators went through everything. What they confirmed was this: the security system had definitely been turned off from inside the house. But what they couldn't confirm was who did it. There was no sign of outside access, no hacking, no remote breach. The system was shut down locally by someone physically present, but the logs didn't name that person. That's when the investigation widened. They started looking at calls, messages, the network of people who had access to Hogan's life. And that's where things took a darker turn. 3 days before he died, Hulk Hogan received a late-night phone call. According to his wife, Sky Daly, she had never, not once, seen him react the way he did after that call. Hogan wasn't a man who scared easily. His entire career was built on the image of fearlessness, larger than life, untouchable in front of crowds.
Hulk Hogan transformed professional wrestling into family entertainment.
Behind the scenes, he had already survived plenty. Public scandals, financial collapse, the breakdown of his first marriage, and periods of deep depression that he later admitted pushed him toward suicidal thoughts. And still, he kept going. He came back, again and again. His wife, Sky Daly, described a completely different man afterward. He was pale, shaking, quiet, in a way that didn't feel normal for him. He wouldn't explain what was said, and when she tried to press him, he shut it down, smoothly, almost automatically, like someone who had learned long ago how to keep certain things locked away. She didn't describe stress or anxiety. She described fear, real fear. When investigators tried to trace the call, things got even more complicated. It didn't come from a normal number. It wasn't directly traceable. Instead, it had been routed through multiple servers across different countries, deliberately masked. The kind of setup that requires both technical skill and intention. This wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. It was engineered to disappear. That alone shifted how investigators viewed it. They considered the possibilities. A warning, an extortion attempt, or pressure tied to something sensitive Hogan may have known or been involved in. But on one point, they were clear. This call was not accidental. It was planned, and it was targeted. Whoever made that call clearly didn't want to be found. What was said during it has never been made public. The contents remain sealed within the investigation. But its place in the timeline is impossible to ignore. 3 days before his death, a man who had faced almost everything suddenly appeared afraid of something. Then, shortly after, a security system that shouldn't have been touched was disabled without explanation. You can draw your own conclusions from that sequence. 3 points on a timeline that don't fully make sense on their own, but become harder to dismiss when placed together. Would they ever find the complete truth about what happened to Hulk Hogan? What other clues have been discovered? Keep watching to find out. What the FBI found in Hulk Hogan's secret room. Then came the second forensic sweep of the mansion, and that's when the entire direction of the case shifted. Behind what looked like a completely ordinary basement wall, no seams, no visible signs of alteration, federal investigators found a hidden room. It wasn't listed in property records. It didn't appear in any blueprints or architectural plans tied to the house. In other words, it wasn't supposed to exist, and yet it had been built or concealed with enough precision that it went unnoticed for years. Nobody saw it unless they were specifically looking for it. Inside, the room was organized with deliberate order, almost clinical. Files were arranged carefully, sorted by category and date. There were medical records, financial documents, and private communications linked to individuals who didn't appear anywhere in Hogan's public life. But one detail stood out more than anything else. Some of the documents were dated the day before his death, which meant one thing: the room hadn't just been forgotten or sealed away. It had been accessed very recently. Someone, almost certainly Hogan himself, had been inside that room in the last 24 hours of his life. And it wasn't a matter of storage or routine maintenance. This wasn't someone filing things away or organizing old records. It looked active, accessed, read, possibly even updated, which raises the obvious question: what exactly was in there? The FBI has not publicly confirmed the contents, but what has filtered out through reporting and investigative sources suggests the files may have included sensitive communications and personal relationships that didn't match the public image of a retired wrestling legend living quietly in Florida. There are also suggestions, unconfirmed but repeatedly mentioned, that some of the material may have involved leverage, information that in the wrong hands would be highly valuable or something someone might want gone entirely. But officially, nothing has been confirmed, and the FBI has stayed largely silent. Their public position is simple: the investigation is ongoing and no final determination of foul play has been made. Still, that silence stands out. We live in an age where almost nothing stays contained for long. Classified material leaks. Court documents surface. Secrets tend to spill out quickly. But in this case, the information surrounding that basement room has remained completely locked down. A silence surrounding a room that, by all accounts, was never supposed to exist in the first place. Former FBI forensic analysts who have reviewed the publicly available details have reached a consistent point of agreement. That level of containment doesn't usually happen because investigators found nothing. You don't suppress nothing. You suppress something that still matters, something that could still have consequences if it became public, and something that someone in authority has decided needs to stay contained. So the question becomes unavoidable. What was in those files that required a hidden room and a federal-level information lockdown? To understand the final chapter of Hulk Hogan's life, you also have to understand that the public version of his family was never the complete picture. What was the missing puzzle in his family story? How does all that tie to the sudden demise of Hulk Hogan? Let's see. Hulk Hogan's disturbing personal life. His first marriage to Linda Claridge began in 1983. It gave the world 2 children, Brooke and Nick, and later the image of an all-American wrestling family through their reality show, Hogan Knows Best. From the outside, it looked stable, even ideal. It wasn't. In 2007, infidelity allegations surfaced. Linda filed for divorce. After 24 years together, the marriage ended in public fallout and financial strain that Hogan later described as one of the darkest periods of his life. He admitted that during the divorce, he reached a point of deep depression, one where he seriously considered not continuing. That wasn't just stress. That was a crisis. And even though life moved forward, those scars never fully disappeared. A second marriage to Jennifer McDaniel lasted about a decade before quietly ending in 2021. Then came Sky Daly, a yoga instructor he married in 2023 after a fast-moving relationship that raised a few eyebrows among people close to him. Those around Hogan described her as calming, steady, someone who brought structure and peace into his later years. He even called her his anchor, but not everyone saw the relationship the same way. His daughter, Brooke, wasn't at the wedding, and by that point, the distance between them had already been growing for years. The strain had been made worse by long-standing public scandals, including a highly publicized leaked recording that Brooke found deeply painful and humiliating. After that, she stepped back from family life. What was once presented to the world as a close, loving family, the heart of a reality show built on togetherness, had quietly fractured into something far more distant and private. Then there was the will. Before his death, Hogan removed Brooke entirely from his estate. His son, Nick, was named the sole beneficiary of an estate valued at nearly $5 million. Everything, assets, accounts, the full weight of a decades-long public career was directed to one child. The other was left out completely. Investigators took note of it, because while inheritance disputes don't automatically mean motive, they do add context. They show where relationships stood. They map out fractures that didn't happen suddenly. They reveal ones that had been forming for years. And in this case, the legal paperwork simply made those fractures permanent. Whether that fracture had anything to do with the circumstances of his death has never been confirmed publicly. But the FBI did take note of it. And in an investigation where every detail is weighed carefully, the removal of a child from a multi-million-dollar estate is not something that gets ignored. As of today, the known facts are that Hulk Hogan died on July 24, 2025. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as a heart attack, consistent with his known medical history. He had undergone major spinal surgery about 10 weeks earlier. His home security system was disabled before emergency responders arrived. The FBI was brought into the investigation, and during a second forensic sweep, investigators discovered a concealed room. The case remains open. Then there are the unconfirmed reports and claims. A mysterious phone call 3 days before his death, allegedly heavily obscured in origin. Speculation about possible nerve damage complications from his May surgery, and the contents of documents found in the basement room, including alleged sensitive communications and contacts. But key questions remain unanswered. Who disabled the security system? And why was it done? What exactly was in that hidden room? And why has so much of it remained undisclosed? What was said in that phone call? What was Hogan doing in that hidden room the day before he died? Were his surgical complications caused by negligence, accident, or something more complex than either of those explanations? These questions remain unanswered.
It was discovered at that time Terry Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, was experiencing a serious medical-related issue.
Sky Daily's medical malpractice lawsuit, if it moves forward, may eventually bring some of those answers into the public record. Civil court cases often surface details that criminal or federal investigations keep sealed. Discovery, testimony, internal records, these processes can pull information into the open that otherwise stays hidden. And a wrongful death claim tied to a high-profile spinal surgery like this would be difficult to fully contain. That process is still unfolding. But here's what is not in dispute. What remains clear, no matter what questions surround everything else. Hulk Hogan changed professional wrestling forever. How? How did Hulk Hogan rise to such spectacular heights? Keep watching to find out. The early life and rise of Hulk Hogan. Hogan was born on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia. His father, Pietro Peter Bollea, worked as a construction foreman, while his mother, Vernice Ruth Moody, stayed at home and also worked as a dance teacher. He came from a mixed heritage: Italian, Panamanian, Scottish, and French. His paternal grandfather, also named Pietro, was born in 1886 in Sigliano, in Italy's Piedmont region. He had an older brother, Alan, who was born in 1947 but sadly passed away in 1986 at the age of 38 due to a substance overdose. When Hogan was about a year and a half old, the family relocated to Port Tampa, Florida. Growing up, he played baseball and was actually a pitcher in Little League. He later attended Robinson High School, where his interest in professional wrestling began to take shape around age 16. He often went to wrestling events at the Tampa Sportatorium, where he became captivated by superstar Billy Graham. Graham's larger-than-life style left a strong impression on him. Hogan even began modeling his own persona after that powerful, almost superhuman image he saw on TV. Alongside sports, Hogan also had a creative side. He spent about 10 years playing fretless bass guitar in several rock bands around Florida. He studied at Hillsborough Community College and later at the University of South Florida, but eventually left college when music started taking up most of his time. In 1976, he formed a band called Ruckus with 2 other local musicians, and they quickly gained popularity around the Tampa Bay area. During this period, he also trained at Hector's Gym, building his physique. Interestingly, the wrestling world and his music scene often overlapped. Many wrestlers hung out at the same bars where Ruckus performed. Even well-known names like Jack and Gerald Briscoe would show up at his gigs. Jack and Gerald Briscoe helped connect Hogan with Hiro Matsuda, the trainer for championship wrestling from Florida, giving him his first real shot at formal wrestling training. But the beginning was rough. On his very first day, Matsuda broke Hogan's leg. After about 10 weeks of recovery, Hogan came back, and this time, things changed. When Matsuda tried to repeat the same move, Hogan managed to stop him. Hogan eventually made his professional debut on August 10, 1977, in Fort Myers, Florida, facing Brian Blair in a match promoted by Eddie Graham. Not long after that, he briefly wrestled under a mask as the Super Destroyer, a character that had been used by several wrestlers before him. After taking a short break from wrestling, he returned in 1978 to compete for Gulf Coast Championship Wrestling in Alabama. There, he teamed up with Ed Leslie, and the two were known as the Boulder Brothers, going by the names Terry and Ed Boulder. While wrestling in Alabama, Hogan also crossed paths with Andre the Giant on a few occasions, including matches and even a televised arm wrestling contest that drew a lot of local attention. On May 24, 1979, Hogan got his first shot at a world title match against NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race. In a surprising turn, Hogan actually pinned him during the match and was briefly announced as the new champion on television. However, the National Wrestling Alliance later reversed the decision, ruling it a disqualification and canceling the title change. Later that year, Hogan and Leslie moved on to Jerry Jarrett's Continental Wrestling Association in Memphis. While there, Hogan appeared on a talk show alongside actor Lou Ferrigno, who played the Incredible Hulk. The host pointed out how physically massive Hogan was compared to Ferrigno, which led promoter Jerry Jarrett's wife to suggest the nickname The Hulk. From then on, he wrestled as Terry the Hulk Boulder. He also occasionally used the name Sterling Golden during this period. What other incredible turns did his life take? Let's see. Hulk Hogan's undefeated legacy. According to his autobiography, My Life Outside the Ring, Bolia briefly stepped away from professional wrestling in 1979 and found work on the Tampa docks. During that time, he was reportedly spotted by Gerald Briscoe, who, along with his brother, encouraged him to return to wrestling. They also helped set up a meeting with Worldwide Wrestling Federation promoter Vince McMahon Sr. However, this version of events isn't universally agreed upon. Some wrestling historians say it was actually Terry Funk who recommended Hogan to McMahon Sr., having seen potential in him during his early matches. Funk, who also appeared in Sylvester Stallone's 1978 film Paradise Alley, would later play a key role in helping Hogan land a major Hollywood opportunity as well, by recommending him to Stallone for the role of Thunderlips in Rocky III. When McMahon met him, he was impressed by Hogan's size and natural charisma and offered him a spot in the WWF, primarily to face Andre the Giant. Hogan is widely regarded as one of the biggest draws in professional wrestling history, and many credit him as a key figure in the success of Vince McMahon's expansion of the industry. Wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer once said, "You can't possibly overrate his significance in the history of the business. He sold more tickets to wrestling shows than any man who ever lived." Hogan himself has acknowledged his place in wrestling history, once saying he considers himself the second greatest wrestler of all time, behind Ric Flair. Others in the industry have offered mixed but notable opinions. Chris Jericho has said Hogan was an excellent in-ring performer and described working with him as one of the highlights of his career. Cody Rhodes has also spoken highly of Hogan, calling his WrestleMania 8 match with The Rock the greatest wrestling match ever, saying it perfectly represents what professional wrestling is meant to be. Bret Hart, however, has had a more balanced view. He praised Hogan's iconic look and influence, even calling him a hero to fans and fellow wrestlers, but also noted that his in-ring technical ability was limited compared to others. WWE paid tribute to Hogan with several memorial segments, beginning with a 10-bell salute on the July 25th episode of SmackDown. Additional tributes followed on Raw, NXT, and during SummerSlam. Other wrestling promotions also honored him. TNA dedicated its July 24th episode of Impact to his memory, while New Japan Pro Wrestling held a 10-bell salute and a formal tribute ceremony during the 6th night of the G1 Climax 35 tournament on July 26th. AEW also acknowledged him on Collision, where former WCW commentator Tony Schiavone delivered a tribute. At the same time, Many commentators reflected on his complicated legacy.
We lost one of the biggest and most globally recognized icons in the world.
While Hogan is celebrated as a wrestling icon, discussions also revisit controversies tied to backstage politics, past racial remarks, and his public political support. Wrestling legend Mark Henry, who had previously criticized Hogan after his racism scandal, summed up the mixed sentiment by saying, "Regardless of his shortcomings, it didn't make him less of a wrestler. It didn't make him less of an entertainer. It's never going to take away from his greatness." In 2026, one of Hogan's most iconic pieces of memorabilia, his WrestleMania 18 boots from his match against The Rock, sold at auction for a record-breaking $1,037,000 through Heritage Auctions. Was it simply the natural end of a body that had already been pushed to its limits? Was it a surgical mistake, one that the medical system didn't catch in time? The truth is somewhere inside that mansion, somewhere in those files, and somewhere in the silence surrounding an investigation that has revealed almost nothing. While time keeps passing, Hulk Hogan built a career playing a man who couldn't be defeated. In the end, something did defeat him. We just don't know yet if it was time, medicine, or something else entirely. And until the investigation is closed, until the files are released, until someone finally breaks that silence, the question remains open. What do you think about the speculation surrounding Hulk Hogan's demise and the recent FBI discoveries? Do you think someone has an explanation to give soon? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for joining us as we piece together the troubling details of Hulk Hogan's secret room. We hope you found this video both interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more interesting facts. See you there.